My name is Allison Venuto, and I am one of the current board members of American Pilgrims on the Camino. And we are so grateful that y'all are here with us today to learn about the Camino, to share about your pilgrimage, or to ask questions about your pilgrimage, whatever the case may be. We are going to do something a little bit different today, something different than we've done in other national events. I see a lot of familiar names in here, so I think that a lot of you guys have come to other events, and we're so grateful for that. One of the things that we're going to do today is to give you some time to answer questions and ask questions in smaller groups. So we will break you into smaller groups at the end of our session so that you can ask questions and maybe have a bit more of a dialogue. We do have a lot of people on this call, which is wonderful, but we want you guys to be able to get the information that you would like to have so that you can have a really great Camino when you walk. So welcome to Camino 101, everything you wanted to know, but were afraid to ask. As we asked before, if you feel comfortable changing your name to letting us know maybe where you are in the US or around the world, or if you are a new with an N or E experienced pilgrim, that will help us when we break folks up into the groups that will be able to answer questions and offer experiences and things like that. So this is part of an ongoing session that we do, which is our national events. And we do these about once a month. We have various speakers, various topics. In the next few, we have people from around the world speaking to us, giving us updates and things like that. So being a member of American Pilgrims is a wonderful way to get support and information to help with your pilgrimage, and then also to help support the pilgrimage in Spain, and also to support financially a lot of the ways that we're able to help those who are going to be walking the Camino as well. So you are welcome to ask questions. You are welcome to put them in the chat. You are welcome to ask questions in the sessions, the breakout rooms as well. Any of those things are welcome. Amy and I have given this talk many times, and I promise you that we get all kinds of questions. So we're happy to answer them as we go through our day today. So first, I wanted to show you a map of Spain and also Portugal as well. You can see here that there are a lot of different Caminos across this area of the world. There are also routes that extend far beyond here up into other places in Europe as well. This is a great map that I really like to show because I like how it shows the different routes in different colors, and you can see that you have lots of different ways to make a pilgrimage if you choose to walk the Camino de Santiago. One of the most popular Camino is this red one that starts over here in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, which is actually in France, and goes across this red here. You see the Française here, and it comes into Santiago de Compostela. So that's the most popular route, the most supported, the one that you'll hear a lot of people talk about if they've walked a Camino or if they're planning on walking a Camino. So just wanted to show you that map because I think it's a great way to see a lot of the different ways you can walk the Camino as well. So now we're to the Ask Amy portion of the day. And so Amy, would you tell us a little bit about the Camino history?
Sure. Well, I think it's also, I love your map with all your routes, Allison, but it's important to think about when our original pilgrims would be walking, they would start wherever they came from. They would start at their front door. And so a pilgrimage started where you are, and it ended when you were done. We hope that they made it all the way to the cathedral, or maybe it wasn't even really much of a cathedral at that point, but that they ended their journey where they wanted it to. But for us as modern day pilgrims who have things like GPSs and phones and all of this technology, the need to have this finite point maybe something to take a bit of a deep breath on. There are pilgrims who have done amazing pilgrimages and have walked starting in destination X, wherever it is, and ended in destination Y, and neither of those are the traditional Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port or Santiago de Compostela. My son had a life-changing moment, made it only as far as Burgos. So don't see a smaller piece as either a negative or not a real sometimes people will quote and say, oh, well, I didn't do the whole thing, or I didn't do the real thing, or I only did some of. A pilgrimage is a pilgrimage. And so always make sure to think about what your journey looks like as your own journey. So that's my little plug there. As far as my journey, I was a delightfully reluctant pilgrim. My husband was gung-ho excited after watching the classic movie that we talk about now, The Way, and came home and said, we've got to go do this. And my answer, of course, was no. There was no discussion, there was no description, there was no paragraph following the word no. It was just no. And after about a year of having some carefully curated collections of books and things in places such as, in the restroom, on the nightstand, all these places, I started to buy in a little bit. I'll meet you at the end, I'll do a little bit all of a sudden. And then at some point it dawned on me, wait a minute, I can eat unlimited carbs. That sounds like fun. Let's go. And so as I began my journey, it wasn't spiritual in nature. It was very logistical. It was, what do I bring? How do I do this? It was a yellow notepad and a checkoff list. And what I found as I've now walked 3 journeys, I've realized that it doesn't have anything to do with my yellow checkoff list. It really didn't even have anything to do with the arrival in Santiago. It was the mindset journey that was transformative in my mind, going from there is no way, I will never, I cannot, to wait a minute, not only have I, but now I've done it 3 times. And it's one of those that there is a draw that hits different people on different levels. And so I always encourage people to find your way. It's not the way, it's your way.
Amy, which ones have you walked?
Sure, I did the traditional, the Française, so starting in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, ending at the cathedral. The second time, we actually backed up into France, and we walked and ended at Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, which was an interesting change because everyone we were with was at that exciting, here we go in the morning moment, and we were at that completion point, but phenomenal way to do it. And then the third time we walked, we started in Portugal, and we actually bicycled up along the coast in Portugal. And that was a completely different experience, but also a really, again, life-changing time. So those are the 3 places we've gone. And I love that you gave me the word shoes, because if we had to guess one question that every future pilgrim or every existing or experienced pilgrim is going to say, is they either A, have an opinion about, or B, have a question about what shoes. The correct shoes are the ones that work for you. You're going to be walking in different types of terrain. You're going to be walking in different types of weather, and you need to figure out what level of support, what width, what ankle design, what open toes, what fluffy socks, what wool socks, what, anything that you need has to work for your feet. So do not recommend just popping on the shoes that you've got stuck by your front door right now and taking a walk, but make sure that you recognize that there is no one elusive answer. Everybody you ask is going to have a different answer and very valid reasons for that answer. So feel free to ask, but know that there is not one specific pair of shoes that is the perfect answer for everybody. The word training, there is one specific answer for that. And the correct answer is yes. Whatever it is, do more, do more, do more, do more. You need to do a lot of training across time. You need to not only say, today it's Saturday, I'm going to get up, I'm going to walk 12 miles, I'm going to go with my local chapter, it's going to be wonderful. But what you need to do is then get up again on Sunday morning and do that. And then get up on Monday morning and do that. And by Tuesday morning, what do your feet feel like? What does your back feel like? How, what does your suntan now look like? And look at the idea of anything across time. Because we can do anything for a day. We can do anything for an hour. We can do anything for a mile. We can do anything. But it's the compounding across time is the consideration to really think about when you're training. Items carried, whatever it is, you probably need less. Spain is not a third world country. These people have stores, they have shopping. If you have something that's no good, you can replace it. What you may not be able to do is replace it right this minute. It may be that you were in a little teeny tiny town that has a store the size of a KOA campground camp store. It may be that you're in a major city and you just walked along the side of an airport. It all depends on, in that moment, what you can and cannot purchase. But know that Spain is not a third world country. Let's see, my most valuable.
Can I jump in, Amy? I do also want to say that the pharmacies are very well stocked. So if you need Compeeds, which are like kind of fatter Band-Aids kind of things that help with blisters. But if you need any kind of foot care, any of those kinds of things, they are very well stocked, even in smaller towns.
Yes, because we pilgrims are in a continual wave in their world. So just like that KOA campground store is going to know to stock lots of marshmallows and cans of beans, and they're going to have marshmallow sticks available in little stacks of wood because they know what their market wants. These little shops are going to do the same thing that we have come through before. We will be coming again, and they do a really good job of recognizing, oh, small tissue packs, very valuable. Small packs of, sunscreen, highly valuable. What kinds of snacks do we want? So recognize that it's going to be okay. My husband is a compulsive overpacker, and I have a show and tell. After 3 Caminos of having everything he needed and been very successful in each, we have this delightfully humorous Ziploc bag of all of the completely unnecessary, shall we say, crap that he has dragged across northern Spain. Don't bring this. You don't need it. It's one of those that's your easiest way to make your day go better, is to have a lighter pack. So really, when we break into the groups and you have specific questions, and if you happen to be in my group, I'll even show you what's in the bag. But know that it's okay. It's going to be fine. If you need things, you can get it. Oh, I'd be happy to share what's in the crap bag. And then know that each night you have a place to stay, and it's kind of a reset. So, you can stay in a communal or at a municipal albergue, which essentially is, bunk beds. It's bunk beds in a big room. You're going to hear snoring. You're going to hear bodily noises, but you're going to have people from all over the world, and you're going to have conversations that maybe bridge 4 languages, and it's going to be amazing. And then the next time you may say, you know what, tonight I need a little peace and quiet. And it may be a small casa rural, and you have a family that's giving you a little TLC, and you've got a private bath and a bed with, nice, clean, soft sheets on it, and you get the best sleep of your life. And it could be anything in between. And that's, and it doesn't have to be every night one or every night the other. Either way is fine. And how do you find them? How do you go? What are you going to do? Well, we all live in an era of cell phones, but honestly, when we walked, there's yellow arrows. If you take the French way, you can just follow the arrows. And if you go the wrong way, there will be little ladies hanging out their laundry, and they will point you in the right direction. Or you will be in a town and going the wrong way, and someone will yell out their upstairs window and point you in the right direction. You'll find your way. It's one of those and if you end up backtracking a little bit, maybe you'll see a different perspective. When we were biking in Portugal, we made a wrong turn. And as we got ourselves back to where we needed to be, looking in the opposite direction, we saw the most beautiful skies. And we took some pictures that are actually some of our favorites from that part of the journey. So even a wrong way isn't necessarily a wrong way. It's just the way you're going. Let's see. I was going to say, I'm kind of trying to be on the clock here. Allison, how am I doing? Am I all right?
You are good.
Okay, I was going to say guidebooks, apps, resources. Yes, there are lots and lots of them. John Brierley's books are considered kind of the standard to which. There's lots of apps. Wise Pilgrim is very popular. All of your local chapter folks and everybody in the breakout room is going to have lots of help with what those types of materials are. Also, if you are a member of the American Pilgrims, our website has an extensive list with lots of resources as well. Only one other thing on my list before we're going to go back to Allison is the idea of volunteering. Volunteering is a way that you can give back. People volunteer at albergues, people volunteer in the pilgrim office, either in Saint Jean or at the cathedral on the other end, helping with, giving people their, lovely accolades for having accomplished their journey. So lots of ways to volunteer and give back. I was going to say, I know questions are popping in left and right. Things in the bag. Let me just give you a couple of those. We have water purification tablets. Spain is not a third world country. Tap water is delightful. We have carabiners in several sizes. Didn't need those. We have a clothesline. Your hiking poles make a beautiful clothesline across the back of 2 chairs. And most of the albergues will have wash lines outside that you can make use of. We have a swim cap. I kid you not. We have a swim cap because we had traveled in Spain, and the one time that we were at a swimming pool, you had to have a swim cap. Yes, Dave brought one. No, he did not use it. We have extra Ziploc bags. You can reuse those about 800 times. You didn't need the other 6. We have an air horn, like bear spray kind of noisy thing. Yeah, didn't need that. We have hand warmers. Yeah, didn't need those. We were plenty warm walking. We have a plethora of earplugs. When you're tired enough, you'll sleep. Promise. We have a jackknife. Didn't need it. Everywhere we went, we were able to make use of what we had. So actually completely unnecessary. Carabiner lines. Oh, I said that one. What else is in here? We have the super fancy water bottle connection device to hook on your belt bag. Don't buy this stuff. You don't need it. Promise. The bag.
Amy, will you talk about using cash and money, and we talk about that?
Absolutely. So a lot of these little teeny tiny towns are kind of still on a cash economy. So as an American who lives in a land where I pull out a credit card for just about everything that I ever do, it's a different mindset. And so what we would typically do is, recognizing today I'm in a tiny town, tomorrow I'm in a big city, is when we would walk through big cities, we would get money out of an ATM at a bank. Just like here, I would not go to some crazy gas station in the middle of the night, the funny ATM over in the corner that doesn't look like it's attached to any bank whatsoever, and put my card in. Well, I'm going to do the same thing in Spain. I'm going to say, no, I'm going to go find a major bank. I'm going to go during business hours and I'm going to get my money there. That way we would keep about 3 days worth of cash on hand, divided between the 2 of us. Again, we're not stupid, so we didn't have it all hanging out of our pocket. We're still traveling internationally. So we had, the money belt hiding under our clothes. Of course, you can go under the sole of your shoe, all the traditional things you can see online as far as places to put your money, but had the day's amount out and available. And that way, you've got a bit of money whenever you needed it, but you didn't have the, now what do I do in case you were stuck? Even, in the since COVID, it's becoming more and more prevalent that you can use a card, but you need to recognize there's a fee associated with that for these tiny businesses. And anytime you can use cash, it's going to be better for them. And they may have like minimums and such that you're going to, not want to be able to use. People ask about, should I have euros before I go? If you work with your bank, and there are certain banks that they'll refund fees for international transactions, negotiate and work it out with your banks. And if you don't find a good one, lob the question out to other pilgrims to find ones that will reimburse that. So you don't have, outrageous fees and outrageous exchange rate issues when you get back home and you realize, how come that cost more than I thought it was going to? But then just take your money out in euros at ATM machines along the way. You never want to use your, if they offer you US dollars to run the card, say no, because you're not going to get as good a rate that way. You're going to want to just do it in euros and learn to translate it in your head so you've got your accounting there. But that way you've got, cash available, but also have a card, and have a second card just in case. We did have an issue with Dave one time. We were traveling. This was actually in France, and his card had that ever so you can't imagine it happens. It's only in the movies where it literally went and it ate the card. It didn't retain the card. It ate the card. So always have more than one card available just in case. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Amy. We appreciate your insights from your Caminos. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of my experiences on the Caminos as well. I did see some questions in the chat that I'll answer as well. One of the questions was, what does a day look like? So I'll be sure to answer that one. And in terms of safety, I always felt safe on the Camino. I've walked with my husband and I have walked together, and then also I walked with part of a group on the second one. So we'll talk a little bit about those as well. So here we go. I will say that finding the Camino for me, I read a book about it years ago. I have no idea what the book was, but I really enjoyed reading travel memoirs. So I'm sure it was someone who had walked the Camino. And I keep a list of places I want to go in the world, and my husband and I want to go. And so that was on the list. And so that's how we decided to walk the Camino. So it was a time in our life where we had some weeks that we could put together. So I'll show you the routes that we've walked. We walked this dark route up here. We started a little bit east of Irun. We started in San Sebastian. So we're at the northern part of Spain. We walked along the coast. This is called the Norte. So we walked up here on this blue one. Then we moved over to the purple one, which is called the Primitivo. We walked down the Primitivo. Then we came into the Frances around Sarria, Melide here, and then we came into Santiago. So that was the first one we did, and that took us 6 weeks of walking to do that part. And that was he and I. The second time we walked with the two of us, my parents, and then 3 of our friends. And we walked from up here. This is Ferrol. So this is called the English. This is historically where the English landed and then walked into Santiago. So we walked from here into Santiago. So that took us about 9 days of walking. If you read guidebooks, they tell you 6 or 7, depending on how you want to break it up. We broke it up more because we didn't want to have such high mileage days. So with that, I will tell you a little bit about how a day looks on the Camino. You get up, you have breakfast, and the breakfast can look different, depending on where you stop or when you stop. Usually has coffee and bread, maybe some other things as well, depending on what you get. And then you do walking. We would usually stop in the morning or have a bit of a snack or something if we could. You can't always, depending on the route that you're on, it's just not as supported. And then we would keep walking, we would have lunch. And on the Norte, we typically carried our lunch because there weren't a lot of places where we could stop in between the stages to have lunch. So we would eat or sit and walk or sit, eat, and then walk again. We always told people that we could take a 4-hour day and turn it into 8 hours faster than anybody. We were on nobody's time. We were not rushed. We did not care if we did 50 kilometers in a day. That was not what we were headed to do. So that was just not important to us. So we just walked and saw what we saw and stopped when we wanted to and kept going. So that's what we did. On the English, because they were shorter days, we had more time to kind of hang out in the cities afterwards. So depending on how long your day is, you can do that. We would get to the hotel, we would do laundry, we would take a siesta, go do shopping if you needed to. Depending on when you're coming into town, stores will shut, especially in smaller towns. So it is important if you need to get anything that you want to make sure that you do that while the stores are open. Then things will open. Spanish culture typically eats dinner quite late. So, 7, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, people are out in the streets. You'll hear them in the bars, the cafes, those kinds of things. And so you can go do that. You'll hear of people having menu del dias, which are restaurants that have a set menu. So you get usually wine or water, a starter, an entree, and then a dessert. So you get a choice of those. They're quite well priced, especially considering what you get. You get a lot of those options. You'll see them in towns and things like that. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was technology. You will hear some people who don't want to have any technology, and that is perfectly fine. They don't want any kind of that while they're walking. They just want to disconnect. What we ended up doing, because there were 2 of us, is I bought a Spanish SIM card, and my phone we put the Spanish SIM card into my phone. so that when we were walking, it was like I had a Spanish cell phone. So we had connectivity, we had maps, we had whatever we needed to do that. John kept his on, he didn't put a Spanish SIM card in, but it would work on the hotel Wi-Fi, or if you go to a cafe or something like that. So if he wanted to get on and do whatever he wanted to do, he had that ability as well. Wi-Fi is quite available in hotels or cities or bars or restaurants or whatever you're doing, albergues, those kinds of things. So there is that available if you decide to do that. So that is there. For food and water, I touched a little bit on the food that we did. Definitely, like Amy said, the water is potable. There's fountains. It's not maybe as many fountains as you want some days. So it is important to look at the weather, how hot it's going to be. What are you used to walking in? What are the uphills that day? So thinking about those kinds of things when you consider your food. I always had snacks. So I always had, fruit or chocolate or just something, because if we couldn't find food, I need my food. So I needed to have that with me as we were walking and doing that. Amy talked about money. So I'm not going to cover that part because I did the same as she's talking about as well. I talked about a typical day there. Our mileage varied. We had one day where we did 3 miles, which was too short, really. We should have extended that. But then we had another day where it's a long story, but we did 26 miles. So that was too much for me. It was a long story, but anyways, but you can kind of decide how you want your stages to look. As you look at the guidebooks that Amy mentioned, they'll have stages and they'll tell you how long they are. Sometimes, depending on the time of year you go, you may want to stay off stage so that you're not hitting so many crowds or so many bookings in the different places that you're going to stay. So speaking of places to stay, Spain has lots of different options on the Camino. Albergues, or the hostels, you'll hear about people staying in those. And so those are, some of them have smaller rooms, but some of them have much larger rooms. So there's lots of people staying in one room. There are casa rurals, which are rural houses. So they're kind of bed and breakfast kinds of things. You have pensions, which are smaller hotels. You have hotels that you can stay at. So there's lots of different ways that you can get your bookings, whatever you're going to do. Some people decide they're going to not book until the day they get there and figure it out. Then they're going to book a week in advance. They're going to book, 3 days in advance, whatever it is. My suggestion is the closer you get to Santiago, the further out you're going to want to book, because there's so many more people who are going to come and join the Camino as it gets closer to Santiago, because people are going to come in at Sadia or the English. As you get closer in, you're going to see more and more people that way. So with that said, just like Amy, there are a ton of ways to volunteer. I got involved in our local chapter, which is the North Texas chapter, and there are chapters all over the United States that we have, and you can go to events. We have an events website on American Pilgrims that you can find different events. They'll have Zooms, walks, potlucks, all kinds of ways for you to get involved. There's ways to volunteer in Spain. We have different volunteers. We are wonderful chapter coordinators, many of whom are on this call, who volunteer to lead the chapters. We have folks who write for La Concha, and they organize the publication of that, our e-publication. And so we have all kinds of ways to volunteer with American Pilgrims or the Camino, however you want that to look for you. So I'm going to pause at this point, and I'm going to say that we are going to move into breakout rooms so that we can get y'all to answer some of the questions. I know there's been some questions coming in the chat. Amy, do you want to go back up through some of those questions and see if you can answer those while I break folks into the chat rooms?
Sure. I was going to say, yeah, I think she added a lot of the answers. There was one that was a interesting topic that we all have to think about. I'm going to hold up a demonstration here. We've got the brand is irrelevant. The contents are essential. Recognize that when you're going in these small, tiny towns to these little tiny bars, that the rest or the bar owner, which we call it a bar, but it also has food. It also has, things like orange juice and coffees. It is not a US bar that is looking for happy hour. But recognize it's a little tiny shop owner that may or may not have the ability to account for this level of need throughout his entire day. So always be prepared. Ladies, be extra prepared, just in case. So, and along the way, there may be a time, and there will likely be a time, or more than one time, that a facility of a flushing variety may not be available for your use. The world is not going to come to an end. People have solved this problem for a long, long time. But recognize when you're looking around and finding a place, perhaps off the path, way off the path, that someone else may have found that place before you. Don't leave any evidence that you were ever there. This doesn't stay behind along the trail. Please pack it out with you. As the Boy Scouts told us along the way, the Girl Scouts, if you take one tiny Ziploc bag, wrap a little duct tape around the outside of it so you don't know what's inside of it, such accoutrements can be placed in there until you find a disposal place somewhere else along the way. But just let's be good stewards of the earth, good stewards for everyone else coming around beside us. The opposite of that is when a facility presents itself, don't miss your opportunity. If it's there, take your turn. That's my topic on that one. As far as other things along the way, it was a nice question in here as far as, how do you get there? It starts at your door. So part of your journey may be learning how to sort out and figure out your transportation options. It's very easy to click one button and make it all happen, but perhaps cost is an issue, perhaps timing is an issue, and working through that is actually part of your journey, figuring out how to make that happen. When you get closer and closer, again, there's lots of options. You can do taking trains, you can take buses, you can share a ride, the Camino, journey. And as you're at the train station and you look around and you see people with backpacks and you learn to be brave and say things like, Peregrino, are you a pilgrim? And you share a ride, or, it's one of those where it becomes a bit of a communal experience. So recognize that you will discover others. There will be people that you will find along the way that may become someone that you interact with a lifetime from across the way. It may be someone that you speak with for 5 minutes and something they say changes your world. It may be somebody that you stand in line next to with a restroom and you shake and smile and nod because, yes, ladies, there is always a line at ours. It just is the way it goes. And that may be your only interaction with that person. But recognize that all these people along the way are also on their journey and on your journey. And maybe that moment where you smiled at them was just what they needed. Or maybe sharing a tissue along the way, or a chocolate piece, or you never know. That makes a big difference. Feeling safe, Allison said it, I agree completely. Yeah, I mean, I felt safe the entire time. In the albergues in the evening, you leave your backpack. And when you walk about the town, you don't take your backpack. And going into it, you think, but I spent all this money at REI. Somebody's going to take my backpack. Nobody wants your backpack after about day 3. I promise. I didn't want my own backpack after day 3, because at some point you're like, wow, summer in Spain is a little on the smelly side. But you'll take a little teeny bag with you with your essentials, because you're going to trust yet verify, like put your bag on the floor next to your bunk. Bring your passport and your money into the shower with you, don't be stupid. These are people that you don't know beyond what you saw in their moment. So take your essentials, keep them with you at all times. I slept with my money belt on, and you can get used to anything. After about 3 days, I didn't even notice it was there. Some people put their money in the bottom of their, in their little sleep sack if they have like a sleeping sheet, or depending on the time of year, if you have a sleeping bag. But, don't be stupid. Do banks open on Saturdays? Having things open is a category for Americans that is really challenging for us. We live in a world of 24/7. Spain does not. Siestas, everything closes. Sundays, grocery stores are closing. So you need to check along the way and figure out. As far as banks on Saturdays, I would likely guess more no's than yes. Again, looking for your ATM machines, those are more likely to be available. So, Allison, are you nodding to me that we're ready to roll? All right.
I am nodding that we are ready
All right,
to roll.
let's roll.
So what we're going to do from here is I've divided us up into to rooms, and we have some wonderful, as we mentioned, volunteers who are going to who've walked the Camino and are going to help lead the discussion. If you see somebody with an E, as a reminder, that means that they are an experienced pilgrim, and somebody with an N on their name, they are someone who's new. So so feel free to ask questions. What we'll do is we'll set you into the breakout rooms, and then we will bring you back into this room here. And so we will have about 20 minutes for you to ask questions and talk with your group. And then we will bring you back in here and we'll do some final questions from here. So here we go.